All right, I've got time for us to begin tonight. Good to see all of y'all. A couple of things before we begin. Let me go ahead and put the topic up. We got the TV in the back fixed. Did y'all see what I just did? I turned around here to look at it. And I don't even have to because I can see it right there. And I turned around anyway. Although halfway through the sermon this morning, or maybe a little bit over halfway, that quit. Yeah, it just stopped. And I was like, have I gone over? Yeah, I know. All right. So the topic tonight, and then I've got a couple of things before we get into it. Keeping wood on the fire. We're talking about it being hot or cold, and so that goes right with our topic. But the subtitle really gets the idea of what we're talking about. It's who we are, not what we do. And what I mean by that, and that's really going to be the first part of the discussion, being a Christian is not just something you do, it's what you are. And that's kind of where we're going with that. So a couple of things before. First of all, remember the project that the other two classes have taken on, getting things together for Project Rescue. There is a list on the bulletin board through the end of this month. So we're right toward the end of that. Tonight, Wednesday night, the last two times that we'll meet this month. So if you do want to bring something for that, and I asked Dale just a minute ago, anything in particular, he said anything on that list would be greatly appreciated. Personal items like deodorant, toothpaste, those kind of things, blankets. There were some other things like that on the list. I know some of you brought things already. If you want to do something like that, you can bring that to the annex, and I know they will appreciate it at Project Rescue. There's a lot of those guys when they come in, they don't have anything. And so anything that you take, anything that they've got there that they can give them is certainly good. The second thing is about our Wednesday night class. This coming Wednesday night, we should finish the book of Colossians, but we may not. Beginning the next month, we've got 9 Wednesday nights before our summer series starts. And so we've got a little time there to do some things. And so what I have in my mind is we may take one of those Wednesday nights to finish Colossians, because the book of Philemon was written by Paul at the same time he wrote the book of Colossians. It was sent to the same congregation because of who it was sent, was a member there in Colossae. It's really a good time to study Philemon when you've studied Colossians. So I want us to look at that book. That may take 1 or 2 Wednesday nights. At the most, that's 3 of the 9, which leaves us 6 weeks. I thought it might be good if you have some topics or questions that you would like for us to give some time to, that we just spend those 6 weeks looking at things that way. And so this gives you a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, to come up with an idea, something that you've had questions about, something that maybe you think we need to give more attention to. And so if you'll get that to me, that's what we'll do on Wednesday night beginning, not this week, well, really begin this week as we finish up Colossians, then look at Philemon, and then any questions or any topics that you think would be worth spending a Wednesday night or 2 on discussing. So that's where we are with that idea. All right, so let's look at this topic, keeping wood on the fire. Now, we've been talking about going and making disciples. And so just like a fireplace or a fire, where in order to keep it from going out, you keep putting wood on it. When we talk about going and making disciples, hopefully we're not talking about just a 1-quarter study or an activity that we involve ourselves in on occasion. You know, we have a door knocking Saturday, or we have a special emphasis to try to get people who are outside of the church involved, but rather a way in which we live where making disciples is simply a part of who we are. And so that's why the subtitle, Who We Are and Not What We Do. All right, so first question, let me just go ahead and do like I did last week. First question is discuss what is meant by that statement. It is who we are and not what we do. The second question, how do we develop the mindset that makes seeking the lost a part of our lives? And then the third question, I want us to look at 1 Corinthians 9, verses 19 to 23, and see how we can apply what Paul said there to this particular discussion. If you remember, and we'll go to that verse, or that passage rather, before we finish tonight. This is where he said, to the weak I became weak, to the strong I became as strong, and so forth. And there's a particular reason that he did those things, and that's what I want us to kind of give attention to. So those are the three questions that I have kind of to formulate our discussion tonight. The passage in 1 Corinthians 9. How do you develop a mindset, a way of looking at things that involves seeking the lost, no matter where you are, what you're doing? But we start with the question, it is who we are, not what we do. Making disciples, seeking the lost, caring about lost souls should be who we are, rather than just something we do. Like some years ago, congregation set aside Tuesday night, and that was the night they'd go out and try to reach the lost. That's a wonderful thing. But relegating that to Tuesday night as if, and I'm not saying the congregation that did that had this mindset, but if I say, okay, that's something I do on Tuesday night, I don't worry about that on Wednesday. I don't worry about that on Saturday. Monday, I'll meet people who are lost, but don't give any thought to the fact that they're lost. So it's who we are, not what we do. And maybe these questions need to go together, because how can I live that way? How can I live my life so that when I see people, I see them not as, you fill in the blank, but I see them as a lost soul who needs the message that I could give them. And so that's kind of open-ended. These kind of classes sometimes scare me, because there have been times I've said, okay, what do y'all think about that? And you hear crickets. But what do y'all think? What comes to your mind when you hear that? Ruby?
I think of the verse, as man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they should be the same thing. Because who we are should be what we do.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, all right. And I understand what you're saying. I guess the way I illustrated a moment ago, my son-in-law uses the terminology, maybe this helps. Scott has at times talked about the fact that some Christians compartmentalize their lives. I know you've seen the old post office cubbies where they would put the mail, and so I've got my religion and it fits in this little cubby hole, and I've got my work and it fits in this little cubby hole, and I've got my recreation, it fits in this little cubby hole, and they never intertwine. They never, and what I'm saying is there ought not be the cubby holes that what I do, no matter where I am and what I'm doing, the fact that I'm a Christian always comes through in that. And that's what you're saying. And you're exactly right. Yeah. 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 And I can't take credit for that. I didn't write that. So yeah. So I can't take the blame either. That's really why I said that. Yeah. All right, anybody else? Somebody else. Larry. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's exactly what, Ruby, what you're saying. The way we are will come across if this is the way we are, it ought to come across to people that way. Yeah, it's the whole package. And your entire life is wrapped up around the fact that you're one of God's people. Any other thoughts? Right. Yeah.
Just kind of visualize it that way, that he's there, no matter who else you're talking to. If you have a husband and wife conversation going on, he's the third person there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whoever you're dealing with, he should be the third person there, and you should act accordingly. And if you're talking to somebody that's lost, that should bring up in your mind, hey, we need to talk about him too. You know?
Right. And I think that's another step beyond. I think we would all agree we should be kind to people. We should treat people right. We should treat them the way we want to be treated. But there's also, you can be nice to people and they're still lost. And the idea is that we take that step that goes beyond, I'm nice to you and you notice I'm not like other people. Well, there's an opening. There's a door that allows you to share with them something they need that they don't know they need, possibly don't know they need. And so this is where I think is a good place for us to go with the discussion. How do I make sure I go beyond just being kind, being nice, being different, to using that as an opportunity to open the door to for that person, open the door to Christ for them? Larry again. Okay, now let me just ask the question, because I know how you reacted. I know how I would react. How would you react if somebody came up to you like that? I mean, is that effective? Somebody just comes up and says, hey, here's my card. I want you to come to church with me. What's the likelihood that you'll go? I know this group. I know you're not going because you're going to be here, right? Is there an effective way, though, to talk with people, meet with people, and when that opening is there, take advantage of it? I don't know how many weeks ago it was, but a number of classes back, we talked about how to initiate conversations with people who, in order to be able to share that message with them. That's what I would consider a cold call. Not meaning that he was not very pleasant and all like that, but it's just he had no idea who you were. You just were somebody there. He walked up and gave it to you. But if it's somebody you know, somebody that's a neighbor, somebody you work with, somebody you've had dealings with, and they've seen the kind of person you are, and there's an opportunity to talk. One of the things we talked about was the fact that everybody has things that happen in their lives that turn their attention to spiritual matters, or at least gives them an opportunity to turn their attention to spiritual matters. And it is then and there that you want to be ready, so that it doesn't come across as, something programmed or something cold, or something you've memorized. So that, sometimes I've seen lists of questions you can ask people to turn in a question or a conversation to spiritual matters. Well, questions are really good. I mean, Jesus used them. But sometimes, it's almost like the question comes out of left field. Like, where'd that come from? It's almost like you're trying to force the situation or force the conversation around to what you want to talk about. On the other hand, when that person trusts you because they know you, it's an opportunity to share with them something they need, something that is good and worthwhile for them. And that's really where I think a lot of times we have our difficulty making that transition, because it's not the normal thing that we do. Because we look, maybe I'm wrong. If I am, correct me, but maybe we look sometimes at making disciples or trying to teach the lost as an activity that we do at church, rather than this is just the way I am. This is the way that I live my life. Any thoughts on that? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. I think there's a lot of truth in that. If I don't trust you, then I'm really not going to accept something like that, because that's so important. I mean, there's a great deal of importance in a discussion about the Bible and about where you spend eternity. And it,
See some of the people, act the way they talk, and some of them come up and ask you, they probably go to church too, but they come up and ask you to go to church. You go to church?
yeah.
That's kind of,
Yeah, which certainly emphasizes to us the importance of coming back to what Ruby started with, that this is the whole package. This is what I am. Whether I'm at work, being at church, you expect people to act right inside a building like this. But then you act the same way at work, you know. So the talk at work kind of gets a little shady, or people start talking about things like, and you're not going to participate in that. Or you're out on the ball field, or you're in the gymnasium, or you're at the gym, or wherever it is, you're the same person. And that's something that is a part of being who we are, not just what we do. Church is not something we do. It's who we are. We worship because we're the church. But then at work on Monday, we act a certain way because we're at the church. And that's I think without question, has to be at the heart of it. Good thoughts. Any others?
One thing about what Larry was saying about being approached by someone is, if we were to practice, because, hindsight's a whole lot better than being right there at the point, trying to figure out what to say. But, someone like that, you appreciate their interest in your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. But trying to take that into further discussions is difficult. But I think, well, they need to know that I appreciate them thinking about that, and that is a good thing to be thinking
Mm-hmm.
about.
Well, I think I know what you're saying, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I'll make confession here. Sometimes when somebody approaches me like that, my first thought is, what can I do to get rid of him? And that may not be the way I ought to look at it. And what Ruby just said is a great way to turn that conversation where you can do what you need to do. And I appreciate you being interested in my soul, my well-being, and use that then to try to do for them what they were trying to do for you. Does that make sense? I mean, that certainly, and what you said about practicing, because how many times has somebody asked you a question like that? I remember years ago. Yeah, exactly. Go black. Regina had somebody ask her a question. They were in the hallway at school, and they met like this. All right, and the lady said, "Y'all don't believe you're the only ones going to heaven, do you?" Because somebody had told her that. And she said, as we're passing in the hallway, she said, I went blank. I mean, how do you answer that? That quickly. That's not a one-word answer. No. And so being prepared, practicing, knowing, and even still, sometimes you're going to get hit with something like that and your mind's going to go blank. So that's certainly a part of it. Jolene?
In that book, when Dean Moreland was at AREP, he used to teach if somebody came and asked you a question about the novel, immediately say, well, I believe just like you believe about that. Let's get the Bible and see, and they can't say, if he shows you in the Bible where it says what it says, then they can't say, no, that ain't what I believe, because it's
Right.
about that.
Right.
And none of the
Mhm.
That guy would tell him or ask him just a little bit of something, and then he'd write down a passage and say, study this, and let's talk about this, you know. And so, once you get somebody interested, that would be a good way to carry it on, just in the workplace or whatever, just, you know, have a scripture that tells why you need to be baptized or whatever. And that would, let them study it out as much as they want to, and when you come back to them, then you've got to come up with the same thing, you can read it out of the same book.
Yeah, that's really good. And both of those thoughts kind of go together because it gets them in the Bible as quickly as possible. Because if you're going to show me something from the Bible and tell me that that's what you believe, well, guess what? I'm going to agree with you because I believe that book too. And so, yeah, that's a really good thought. And that idea, maybe that's what we keep in our mind. How quickly can I get that person into the Bible? How quickly can we get the Bible open between us?
And all of it's positive. All those things are positive.
Right.
Well, you're not, you just can't turn a negative thought because that's gonna turn them off.
Right. Yeah.
Positive thought, it's gonna.
Yeah. That's true. Good thought. All right. So I think that's probably long enough with that question. Let's go ahead to the next one. But with those thoughts in mind, come on. There it is. How do we develop the mindset? We're talking about it. We think. We're prepared. We practice. We before you get into the situation, you're thinking, okay, how am I going to handle that? If somebody says, like the man came up to Larry, or somebody raises a question, what am I going to do about that? You're thinking beforehand. You're getting ready for it. This may be, some of you may just say, you bring up something else, but how many of you in here are basketball fans? You like basketball? All right. Maybe enough that I can do this. I was thinking last night, we were watching, not last night, yesterday afternoon, watching one of the basketball games, and it came down to the very last second. Another one this afternoon did the same thing. And those teams practice not just how to shoot, not just how to pass, not just how to dribble, but they will set up scenarios where they practice. We're ahead or we're behind by this amount with 3 seconds left. And what are we going to do? So that when they get into that situation in the game, they know what they're going to do. And it's amazing how efficient they can be with 2 seconds. Well, we need to be that way. Somebody's going to come up to me at work. Somebody's going to approach me that I don't know who they are. And I want to know how I handle that. I don't want to walk away from that. Ruby, you talked about hindsight. I don't want to walk away from that thinking, oh, I wish I would have said this. Or I wish I would have thought about doing it this way. And so being prepared. So how do we develop that mindset so that that's the way I'm thinking day in and day out, that I'm going to make seeking the lost a part of my life? Pray about it. All right? I've heard people say it. I've done this in classes myself. And I mentioned the example of Aaron Gallagher, who is on, I just noticed that somebody left one of these up here from Friday night, the Authentic Christian Podcast. And if you're interested, right here's the information. This is really, really good podcast to listen to. It's on video too. You can watch it if you want to, where they discuss Bible topics. But Aaron Gallagher was teaching a Bible class and was emphasizing to the people in the class, when you have an opportunity with somebody, use that opportunity. And what I was going to say earlier, pray that God gives you an opportunity to talk to somebody about Jesus. But then when that opportunity comes, be ready to take it. And he talked that in class like on Wednesday night. Thursday, he was like at a coffee shop, drinking some coffee and studying. And he said 5 guys came in, or 4 guys came in and set a table near to him, and they were talking about the Bible. And he said, God, you did this. You put me in that situation. Now, either I've got to do what I told my class to do, or I'm a big hypocrite. But now, and I think I used this in class one night, the way he approached them was that very thing. He said, let me tell you what, I taught this in Bible class last night. And he said, now you guys come in here like this, so I either have to talk to you about the Bible, or I'm a hypocrite. And of course, they chuckled, they laughed, and it opened things up, and he was able to sit down and talk with them. So those are the kind of things that you can do if you think about it beforehand, if you prepare beforehand, and if you pray about it. So if you pray, Lord, give me an opportunity. Do 2 things. Look for it, and then take advantage of it when you see it. What else can we do to develop that kind of a mindset?
Just going back to what Larry said, just him telling us about that experience will open our mind up to things that we could do. Because if he hadn't said that, I wouldn't have been expecting somebody. And it's helpful. So I think we should share our experiences with each other so that we can be prepared.
All right. Oh, that's good. Share your experiences with each other. Hey, this is something that happened to me this week. This is a question somebody asked me this week. How would you have handled this? That's good. That's really good. What else? Calvin.
I think we need to recognize you there, David, can't be disappointed in trying to teach others and show others the correct way that they're not willing to accept. That more will not than we. And that's scripture.
Yes, you're exactly right. And that's really where we kind of started with that idea at the beginning of this study, at the beginning of the quarter. What is our, and I don't like using the word, but I'm going to, what's our job as Christians when it comes to the lost? What does God expect of us? To teach them. Whether they are obedient to the gospel or not, that's not on you. That's not on us. God gives the increase. That's what Paul told the church at Corinth in 1 Corinthians 3:6. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. Man has his place. There are things that we do. But whether that person becomes a Christian or not is not your responsibility. And you're not a failure if they don't. If you teach somebody the gospel, you succeeded in what God wanted you to do. If you gave them an opportunity to study, if you gave them an opportunity to know what they need to do, and they say, no, thank you, you succeeded in what you were supposed to do. It's not always easy to accept that, particularly if it's somebody you care about. But that's the way it is, and that's something that we do need to recognize. Have realistic expectations when it comes to those matters. Other thoughts? I know some of you have some really good ideas. You're just not speaking up.
On the point that he made, I tell my grandkids and other kids that play baseball, don't understand why you can't go to bat and get a hit every time. You know, even professional baseball, if you get hit 30% of the time, that's considered pretty good.
Yeah. But that's also failing to hit 70% of the time.
True,
Yeah,
true, but it's considered good.
exactly.
Very good percentage.
Yes.
When it comes to sales, for example, I know people who enter sales, they consider 10% very good.
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably that would be similar to talking to people about Christ and the percentage of people who are truly interested in what you have
and I'm painting with a broad brush here, but a lot of times because of that, we want to change our tactics. And in order to get that person in the building or in the baptistry, and sometimes the gospel suffers in order to get numbers. And that's something we have to avoid. And having the realistic expectation, understanding. You know, let's just use those numbers. For every 10 people you talk to, 9 people are going to say no thank you. Or they may spend a little bit of effort or a little bit of interest, but then, no thank you. But that one that says, I do believe that, I want to obey that, that's makes it worthwhile.
And just like in sales, anybody goes into sales, they'll tell you if your boss says, don't have people here, I don't know. But the more people you try to sell to, the more chances are that you're actually going to make a sale. And, and I hate comparing Taylor Sloan to a salesperson, but I think there's something to that. At the same time, the more people we talk to, the greater chance are that we are going to find that person that needs it, that wants it, that desires to have it.
Yeah. Well, to go back to the baseball analogy, wasn't it Babe Ruth that said, every time I strike out, it brings me one at bat closer to a home run? And so it's the same concept. But at the same time, we also recognize that with each one of those people that says no, you've still done what you're supposed to do. And it's easy to get discouraged. If you've ever been involved in door knocking campaigns, every time I think about door knocking, this one event, this one house comes back to my mind. It's in Hazelhurst, Georgia. And we had gone down there on spring break, so it was about this time of the year. And Winfred Claiborne, Brother Claiborne's been here before. He's now passed on and gone on to his reward. But he was the speaker at the gospel meeting. And we were door knocking, and we were doing it like a religious survey, asking people things about what they thought about the Bible, what they thought about, just to have an opportunity to talk to them. We knocked on this door. Lady comes to the door. She's got a big smile on her face. There's a screen door there. And she opens the screen door up like this so that she can see all of us that are standing. I think there may have been 3 of us standing there. And when we said, Church of Christ, that door goes like this. It's still open, just a little bit, but she got the door back between us and her. All right? You have enough of that happen, and it can be so discouraging. But if you went out and knocked on 150 doors one day, and that's what you got in all 150 doors, you still did what God wanted you to do. That should be the mindset that we try to develop. I'm just trying to get the message to people. They can do with it what they want to do with it, because ultimately they have to make that decision. I remember as a young preacher and trying to study with people, I almost hate to say this, but it's true, so I might as well. I would almost try to kind of work them into a corner where they had to accept. That doesn't work. They just need to simply see what is required and make their own decision. When we were in New Zealand a number of years ago, Jimmy, my brother-in-law, and I, one of the ladies at one of the congregations we were at, her husband's Vietnamese. And he was one of the boat people. You remember the people that left Vietnam in boats to get away from the terrible conditions? They ended up in New Zealand. And they met, married. She was a New Zealander. He was Vietnamese. She was a member of the church. He was not. And she wanted us to teach him, to talk with him. So we did. But he wanted to buy us lunch. So he took us to a really, really nice, it was a Vietnamese restaurant, really, really good. And he bought our lunch. And then we sat down to study with him. Well, Jimmy led the study, and he opened his Bible to the book of Acts, and he showed him what they preached and what they did. He said, "Now that's what you need to do." Now, very simple, very straightforward. It may not have been the best approach, but what he did was show him what he needed to do. Because he had some understanding about the church. He had some understanding about the Bible. And so sometimes that's all it is. We're not trying to indoctrinate. We're not trying to trick. We simply give them the message and let them make their decision. All right, so that's a little bit afield from the question, but understanding our role and understanding our responsibility, I think, is a part of developing the mindset. Anything else on that before we go to the last question? All right, how do we apply? Let's look at 1 Corinthians 9. Verse 19, I'll go ahead and start reading it. "For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. And to the Jews, I became as a Jew, that I might win the Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, not being without law toward God, but under law toward Christ, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak, I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Now this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you." And so what is Paul saying here? This idea about people who are free, people of bondage, people under the law, not under the law, weak. What's his point? Or is he saying, I try to see where people are and start where they are to take them to where they need to be? What are your thoughts on that passage? All right, find something in common and build on that. The various groups he's talking about, Jews or Gentiles, those under the law, those not under the law. And notice his parenthetical statement, not being without law toward God, but under law toward Christ. At all times, Paul recognized, I am a servant of Jesus Christ. I live by his law. But if there's something I have in common with this person that will help me reach him, I will take advantage of that. And I will use that, because as he states in verse 22, his purpose is to save some. That's what I want to do. And so that person at work, that person at recreation, that person in the neighborhood, what's the avenue by which I can reach that person? That's what Paul is saying. All right, I appreciate your comments tonight. I hope it's been helpful to study these things together. One of the things that he did, for example, when it came to the matter of eating meat or not eating meat, if he was around people who recognized or followed those dietary laws, he would not violate that in front of them. He talked about doing that back in chapter 8 of 1 Corinthians. But the point that I think needs to be noted, not at any time did he violate the law of Christ in order to do that. If you'll take a songbook and turn to number 240. The song entitled Have Thine Own Way. And it comes across as a prayer on our part to the Lord, where we offer our submission to God. One of the points that we talked about this morning in the lesson was the need to be submissive to His will. Our lives on this earth will never be what they could be until we submit to Him. But when we give ourselves to God, when our will is surrendered to His will, then life can be lived as God intended for it to be. Long time ago, and I've used this multiple times since then, Brother Clark, Winfred Clark, talked about God's commandments. A lot of thou shalts and thou shalt nots. He said that's not the way we should look at it. When we look at God's command and it says, thou shalt not, God is really telling you is you stay away from this because it's going to hurt you. And when God says thou shalt and gives us a positive command of something to do, what God is really saying is not, I'm laying a burden on top of you, but here is something that will bring a blessing to your life. If we look at God's word and God's will that way, it makes all the difference. When we say to Him, have thine own way, then our life is going to be far, far better and more blessed. So tonight as we sing this invitation song, if you have in your life a need to be made right with God, that opportunity is extended to you. If you need to be obedient to the gospel tonight, become a Christian, let us assist you in that. It will truly be a glorious day for you, the day as you begin living as a child of God. If you need to respond to the Lord's invitation, do it right now while we stand and while we sing. In just a moment, Caleb Dunaway will lead our closing prayer. Let me mention those on our sick list. Remind you, Regina Suttles recovering from her surgery. Also, Lincoln Terry suffered a broken elbow. Mitzi Dunaway continues to recover from her surgery. Dot will be continuing radiation treatment this week. Also, Shane Glaze underwent shoulder surgery this past week. Keep him in your prayers as he recovers from that. Friend of Steve Gullion's had a farm accident last week. Terry Dyer, his condition was critical. Also, John and Sharon's grandchildren, TJ and Katie, will be having their tonsils taken out this week. Others that we need to mention. A couple of things coming up. Remember, next Sunday, after our morning service, is the egg hunt at the Gullions. Information's in the bulletin concerning that. But remember, there's a sign-up sheet on the bulletin board. This has to do with the lunch. So be sure and sign up for that if you're going to be a part of it. And then next Sunday night, at this hour, instead of our Bible class time, we'll be having our song and prayer service. The theme of that service, let us be fishers of men. And so keep that in mind. Anything else we need to mention tonight? Oh, thank you. The Lord's Supper prepared for those who need to partake of it will be in this classroom right back here. Jeff? All right. Kids K through 6 in the workroom after we dismiss, working on materials concerning the Ukraine. And as always, keep the church in that area in your thoughts and prayers. Oh, yes, I do have something else. We got a message this afternoon. Friends of ours, but these are members of the church in Mississippi, down in the Delta area of Mississippi. And it's this family, Joe and Carmen Pruden, but then some extended families from them, at least 2 different families extended from them. In the recent tornadoes, they lost everything they had, and they asked that we keep them in our prayers. But one comment in what they sent was they said this is a farm family, so their equipment, buildings, all of those things gone. They said those things can be replaced. We're thankful that we're alive. So please keep the Pruden family and their extended family in your prayers over the coming days. Was there anything else about that? All right. Anything else we need to mention tonight? Caleb, you will.
Bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all the many blessings you give us each and every day of our lives. Thank you for giving us the commandment to come together and worship you and to help lift each other up. Thank you for giving us this congregation that so many of us rely so heavily on. Thank you most of all for your Son who came and sacrificed himself for us. Please let us use him as the example in our lives. Please let us put him and his words first. Please be with us as we go throughout the rest of the week and the rest of the night. Keep us safe and let us take what we learned tonight and learned this morning to apply in our lives so that we can bring others closer to you. In Christ's